Welcome to this week's edition of the Bull and the Bear Show, coming to you from beautiful Laguna Beach, where we are enjoying an absolutely fantastic Thanksgiving holiday week. We wish all of you a very joyful Thanksgiving week, and we thank you for tuning in and watching the show. We've got three interesting things for you this week. We've got this week's bull, which is the equity markets or stocks. We've got this week's bear, which is volatility, and then a very interesting holiday topic. Bitcoin is the steer of the week. So let's jump right into it. This week's bull, we'll talk about a couple of things. All-time highs, first of all, in the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, and the Dow, and the Russell 2000 this week. And let's talk about the reasons why. Not only the U.S., but we've seen the same thing in the Asian equity markets in Korea and in Japan. I think probably 25 out of the last 30 days have been up days in Japan. And they had two missiles shot over Hokkaido a couple of weeks ago by Rocket Man in North Korea. Even in South Korea, that market continues to move strongly upwards. So very interesting. Let's talk about what's going on in the United States and what's driving the equity markets. Let's talk about the fundamentals. We look at the economy in three important segments: growth, inflation, and policy. Policy from the government. Growth is strong. We've had 3% quarter-over-quarter GDP growth. We've had 2.5% annualized GDP growth, and those kind of growth numbers will influence a market. Every time you get a new reading, it's positive and trending higher. Hey, that's good for the animal spirits, as they say. Let's talk about inflation. Inflation has been tame. It's been bouncing around between 1.25% and 1.8%, kind of depending on the oil price over the last really 12 months. So inflation is not really hindering the market or slowing it down, and the Fed is hiking rates every so often with mild inflation numbers. So that's a bullish catalyst as well. And then let's talk about policy. We've not really gotten any policy reform in the in the United States. But there is the expectation that we'll get some tax reform, perhaps some reform in the delivery of health care, and then out there on the horizon, maybe at some point some infrastructure spending. If those legislative agendas get passed, expect that to be additional bullish catalyst to the market. So, and then let's talk about the earnings season, which we've just finished up for the third quarter of 2017. In the S&P 500, sales up 5.5%, earnings per share up 7%. In the Dow, sales up 6.5%, earnings per share up 8.1%. And how about the NASDAQ continuing to post strong numbers? Tech has just been on fire this year. Sales up 10.8% and earnings per share up 21%. How'd you like to get a 21% raise? That's pretty strong, isn't it? And then the Russell 2000, sales up 6%, earnings per share up 8.9%. So, we're really looking at this on a data-driven analysis. We're not just, breathing in, the beautiful sunshine of Southern California and investing accordingly. No, this is based on the data that's coming in. And then let's look out, because everyone's asking me, Blair, what's going to happen? And when's it going to crash? I want to know. In terms of, if you look at the sales estimates for the S&P 500 over the next 4 quarters, every single quarter, every single sector has a positive estimate. Now, estimates can change, and we'll let you know if they do, but it's all green on the board for the sales numbers over the next 4 quarters, which is basically, as far as we can see. And then in terms of the actual earnings estimates, I think there's like 2 or 3 quarters in the telecom and utility space where they have slightly negative earnings estimates. Everything else is green when it comes to earnings as well. So on both the sales and estimates fronts, the numbers look good over the next 4 quarters. So if that changes, we'll let you know, and it will be harder to comp the comp, beat last year's numbers, right, as they continue to come in positive. But as of right now, that's where things stand. So that's why stocks are this week's bull. Let's go to this week's bear, which is volatility. On the flip side of all-time highs in the markets has been all-time lows in volatility, very low. And in fact, if you look at volatility on a, what percentile are we in from 1 to 100, we're sub 1% when it comes to the Dow, the Russell 2000, the S&P 500, they're all sub 1%. And then the NASDAQ's, on a 60-day realized volatility, it's at like 8%. So it's very low. And we don't, if that changes, we'll let you know, but the trend has been lower and lower volatility. So, and that's in the face of, again, we've had, issues of going back, ISIS, Brexit, the Iran deal, North Korea launching missiles, testing hydrogen bombs, and the market has shrugged this off on really the strong earnings and growth numbers that we've already talked about. So that's this week's bear, which is volatility. And now let's get to the last and interesting topic, which is this week's steer, and that's Bitcoin, something that everybody wants to talk about, people ask about all the time, people bother me on Facebook about it and post things. Here's the deal. I've been following Bitcoin since like 2009 when it was first released. Bitcoin was less than 0.2 of a penny per Bitcoin at that time. I remember like the first major transaction that was done in the Bitcoin markets was someone bought a pizza for 10,000 Bitcoins. So you buy a $20 pizza, you pay 10,000 Bitcoins for it, but the big deal was that someone had actually accepted Bitcoin for a transaction, right? So that's probably the most expensive pizza anyone's ever bought, because if you invested $10,000, not 10,000 Bitcoin, but $10,000 in Bitcoin, it would today be worth $900 million. So, I wish that I could have figured out how to buy $10,000 worth of Bitcoin, but the truth is it was very difficult to buy Bitcoin then, and there is a long list of exchanges that have been hacked and failed in this history, this evolution of the Bitcoin process. Mt. Gox in 2014 transacted 70% of all Bitcoin transactions, and they failed and stopped. They basically got hacked. I think $473 million worth of Bitcoin were stolen from them, which was a lot of the Bitcoin at that time. And since then you've had Bitstamp, DAO, Steemit, Bitfinex, CoinDash. These are all multi-million-dollar hacks of the Bitcoin exchanges, and these really aren't exchanges. They're just websites where people are, trading Bitcoin with each other. And so that tells you a little bit about Bitcoin. It's not like a regular commodities or stock market exchange where there's a bid and ask spread. You can short, there's no short sellers. It's not a two-way market. It's not a real market. The Chicago Board of Exchange has said, hey, we're going to offer options and futures on Bitcoin. Of course, they're not going to settle those in Bitcoin. They'll only be settled in cash, so you can't get Bitcoin from those transactions. And the reason why the CBOE is doing this is very clear. They want to be able to charge you a commission for every future and options contract that you buy and sell. That's why they're doing it. It's not about, this is not, a vote on the value of Bitcoin. In fact, the value of Bitcoin is very volatile. We talked about low volatility in the equity markets. Bitcoin has 83% annualized volatility, and it's crashed 90% as recently as like 18 months ago. So when you have that kind of volatility, it's very difficult to use that as your payment. Is it money? Not if it's that volatile, it's not. Is it an investment? It's not an investment. Is it a speculation? It absolutely is a speculation. Can you afford to put 1% of your wealth into Bitcoin and set it and forget it and lose it all, or let it go to the moon? Yeah, you could probably afford to do that. How can you do it? You got to be very careful. I just saw an article 2 days ago about someone that tried to buy, or they said they bought $40,000 worth of Bitcoin off of a guy on Craigslist. He wrote him some numbers on a piece of paper and said, there you go, upload those, you'll get your Bitcoin. And he took the 40 grand. So be very careful what you do when it comes to Bitcoin. And understand this, Bitcoin does get taxed. It gets taxed as a capital gain, both short or long term. So you're going to pay 25 to 33% higher in taxation on Bitcoin. And the IRS has been after Coinbase, one of the largest current exchanges, to turn over their list of clients. So trust me, the feds are watching. And they haven't started regulating these initial coin offerings. But when you get guys like Floyd Mayweather promoting basically Ponzi scheme initial coin offerings, trust me, the feds are coming on that, and you got to be very careful because some of those have been hacked. There was one from an Israeli startup that got hacked within the first 13 minutes, and they lost several $1 million. So it's a real deal. You got to be careful. when it comes to buying and selling them, they're very, very difficult to do. You can't do it on the stock exchange. There is one traded security that says that it has Bitcoin in trust. There's no way for really anyone to do the due diligence and know if those Bitcoin are actually in the trust. You'd really have to be really up on Bitcoin to know whether or not they actually have Bitcoin in cold storage. And on top of that, you'd have to be willing to pay, as of the close of the market the other day, a 28% premium to the price of Bitcoin just to buy those. So the price of Bitcoin plus 28%, and if that premium evaporates, you lose all that money, and who knows if you actually have Bitcoin underlying it. So if you want to talk about it, give me a call. I can send you a list of 36 exchanges that have gone out of business. Could it go much higher? It could. I don't think there's any way to know. So that's my 2 cents on it. Thank you for watching. And also, the other thing, as a licensed broker, it's very difficult to give advice about something like that because we're licensed as fiduciaries and we have to look out for your best interest. So isn't in your best interest to put 1% in and lose it all or make a lot? How can I know that without knowing more about this market? And trust me, I've tried to find out for a good number of years now. So thanks for listening. Appreciate your time. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you soon. The Bull and Bear Show. Good night.